Hi all. Thanks for having us from the UK ETS to sort of present to you today and give you an overview of our scheme. I've got Supreef on the line, my colleague from the markets policy team, and also Nia from the international team, who will hopefully be sharing some slides up in a minute that we can share with you.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you, everyone. I didn't expect that we have three cases, so that's why I just said you are the one
Yes,
single third case. I'm sorry.
no worries. There'll be two speakers, myself and Supreef will be sharing the presentation today that will talk you through.
Hi everyone. I'm just trying to work out how to share my screen. Sorry. Might just have to share the whole.
Yes, it's coming up. Yeah.
Okay, 1 second.
Just go to the presentation mode. No. Yeah, now we can show your PowerPoint program. Yes.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nia. Hi all. As a way of a quick introduction, my name is Ash. I'm a senior policy advisor within the markets policy area in the UK ETS. And my job is sort of primarily focused on looking at the market stability mechanisms that we have in place and how they could potentially develop.
Could you speak closer to the microphone a little bit?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Can you hear me
better.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So my role as a senior policy advisor is primarily to look at our market stability mechanisms and how they could develop as the UK ETS continues to mature. When I pass over to my colleague Supreef later on, he can sort of give you a brief introduction as to what he does within the markets team as well. So if we move on to the next slide, which is just a quick agenda, which is primarily providing a quick overview of the UK ETS, an introduction to emissions trading, speaking about our auctions process, the market stability mechanisms we have in place, the secondary market, and also how we're sort of looking at future markets policy moving forward. Thanks, Nia. This is a quick snapshot and overview of the UK ETS, which started in 2021, and it covers 25% of the UK's emissions. When it comes to the number of entities, it's 688 installations and 370 aircraft operators. In terms of the sectors, it covers its power, industry, and aviation. Some of the greenhouse gases the UK ETS covers is carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and perfluorocarbons. Apologies, that's a hard thing to pronounce. And in terms of governance, the UK ETS authority consists of the UK government, the Scottish government, the Welsh government, and Northern Ireland. And we also work with regulators, which include the Environment Agency and various other environment agencies from across the UK in Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, etc. Thanks, Nia. So this is a brief introduction to emissions trading. So emissions trading is a market-based instrument that can be used to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. It works on the principle of cap and trade, where the government, so the UK, imposes a cap on total emission in one or more sectors of the UK economy. So companies in these sectors need to hold one permit for every ton of emission they release. So they'll need to surrender one UK allowance for example, for one ton of CO2 emitted by themselves. And then they may either receive or buy these permits, and they can also trade them with other companies on the secondary market. So that forms the trade part of cap and trade. In terms of just to quickly provide some benefits of what a market mechanism provides, it puts a price on carbon emissions to hopefully persuade companies to change their behavior. It supports wider policy goals within the UK, e.g. net zero by 2050. It also provides flexibility to companies. They can sell allowances if they have extra available, but they can also buy more if they've emitted more than they planned. So there is a range of benefits to this market system. Thanks, Neil. Why is a market-based system helpful? So as I spoke about, market incentives give companies motivation to reduce emissions for their own interest in terms of avoiding having to pay for the cost of their emissions through the UK allowances. And it also supports our own climate ambitions and delivery of our net zero target. It also provides incentives in terms of the greatest reductions will be seen in firms that can achieve their reductions most cheaply. A commitment to a long-term, consistent market-based system also provides stability and confidence to companies, which will hopefully result in an increase in decarbonisation investments. And then ETS market mechanisms are able to mitigate against potential price shocks, so excessively low prices, rapidly rising prices, any instances of market abuse and demand shocks as well. Thanks, Neil. In terms of allowance allocation, auctions are the main way that UK allowances are distributed in the UK ETS. And in addition to buying allowances at auction, participants are also able to trade allowances on the secondary market. The benefits of auctioning include that regulated companies pay for their emissions and their compliance obligations. It provides companies with an incentive to take early action to decarbonise. And also through auctions, we generate revenue which can then be used by government across a range of issues, but could also primarily be used to support decarbonisation, as well as funding other sort of public services more broadly outside of the decarbonisation sphere. Thanks, Neil. In terms of auctioning and a bit more background, that started on the 19th of May 2021, following the UK's departure from the EU ETS. And as I said, it's one of the main routes to market for UK allowances. They are hosted fortnightly by an auction platform called ICE Futures Europe. Approximately just over 2 million UK allowances will be offered at each auction in 2026. So as I mentioned before, companies would be required to surrender 1 UK allowance for each tonne of CO2 or equivalent that they emit. And we try to make auction eligibility wide to support market delivery. So scheme participants, any affiliated companies, and also credit institution investment firms with relevant permissions can also participate. And they're useful, particularly when it comes to the secondary market. Thanks, Neil. And then finally, when it comes to the auction process, we have a term which is called partially cleared. So an auction does not fully clear or partially cleared if there are any unsold allowances. These unsold allowances are then transferred to the next 4 auctions, hopefully. However, if we transfer these auctions to the next four auctions and the volume compared to the original volume is 125% or over, then these excess allowances are either moved to one of the other 3 auctions, or they also move to something called the Market Stability Mechanism account. This could potentially happen if there are multiple partially cleared or failed auctions in a row. So that's sort of the process if there are partially cleared auctions in the UK. I think this is where I pass on to my colleague Supreet, if I'm not mistaken, who will talk you through market stability mechanisms. And it was also if he doesn't mind me saying, an expert on the secondary market as well. So he can hopefully provide some background on that. Thanks, Abrief.
Thank you, Ash. I hope everyone can hear me clearly in the room. So yeah, I'm
Yes, yes,
Supreet
we can hear you.
okay, brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Supreet and I work with Ash in the markets policy team of UK ETS as a senior policy advisor. So along with Ash, I also look at market stability mechanisms, but I'm also responsible for stakeholder engagement with secondary market participants, just to see, as well as monitoring the secondary market to make sure that the ATS market is functioning as we see it. Just to carry forward from where Ash left, so for the success of UK ETS, it is important to have an effectively functioning carbon market. The purpose of UK ETS is to incentivize abatement in the most cost-effective manner. So for this, the UK ETS aims to provide confidence in the market, especially because we're just a 5-year-old market, um, ensuring that the market has stability, liquidity, whilst also mitigating against excessive market volatility. Thanks, Nia. So to ensure stability, liquidity, and confidence, the UK ETS has two market stability mechanisms. So the first is the auction reserve price, which acts as a floor price. The auction reserve price, or ARP as we call it, sets a minimum bid price at auctions of £28, which is approximately 1200 baht. Bids below this price are not accepted. This helps prevent allowances being sold too cheaply and preserving the carbon price signal for decarbonization. The second mechanism we have is the cost containment mechanism, or CCM, which provides the UK ETS authority with the option as well as discretion to intervene if prices are elevated for a sustained period of time by releasing additional allowances through increased auction volume. So this mechanism specifically helps prevents the market from sustained price spikes. Thank you, Nia. So just to give a brief overview of what is the cost containment mechanism. So until January 2022, the cost containment mechanism, or CCM, was to be triggered if for 3 consecutive months, the average end of day settlement price of a UK allowance was more than double the average price for the preceding 2 years. During this time, the CCM was triggered twice, once in December 2021 and again in January 2022. In both instances, the authority decided that the appropriate course of action was not to redistribute or release additional allowances into the market. So the authority concluded that not intervening was the right course of action to support the continued effective functioning of the UK ETS market, particularly as prices at that time were responding to fundamental market drivers and not because of any market manipulation. The methodology for calculating these thresholds was clearly communicated in advance, and when it triggered, the UK ETS authority was committed to sharing a decision within 2 weeks. So this led to transparency as well as flexibility for the UK ETS authority. Thank you, Nia. So when the UK ETS was launched as a standalone system in 2021, there were heightened uncertainty about price formation and liquidity. So for this reason, to address the concerns around reactiveness of the UK ETS in managing high price spikes in this nascent stage, the CCM was designed to be more responsive in earlier years. However, as the UK ETS matured, price discovery stabilized, and the authority decided that intervention should become rarer. Therefore, from February 2023, the CCM will be triggered if the relevant UKA price is, or UK allowance price is, more than 3 times the average price for the preceding 2 years for 6 consecutive months, rather than the previous 2 times for 3 consecutive months. Thank you, Nia. So, apart from auctions, the UK ETS supports trading on secondary markets, allowing participants to buy and sell allowances outside of auctions. This improves price discovery and liquidity, especially for smaller participants or those with variable emissions profiles. Secondary markets also started on 19th May 2021, along with primary auctions, and they are hosted by ICE Futures Europe as part of the conditions of the auction contract. December futures contracts are the main product traded, giving participants the ability to lock in carbon prices ahead of time for future emissions. That is for hedging purposes. We use end of year current uh, futures contracts as our main measure of price in the UK ETS. This is used for triggering the cost containment mechanism as well as for calculating penalties for non-compliance. For 2026, it is the December 2026 UK futures contract. Trading in the secondary market is monitored by ICE Futures Europe as well as the UK's Financial Conduct Authority to ensure that trading complies with UK market oversight rules. So, in practice, many compliance participants may access the secondary market through banks, brokers, or intermediaries rather than trading directly, particularly when they don't have any in house trading expertise. The secondary market therefore supports compliance planning by allowing operators to manage their allowance needs throughout the year rather than just relying on scheduled auctions. The secondary market also provides important market data such as traded prices, trading volumes, and open interest, which helps the UK ETS authority to monitor market functioning, liquidity, and potential signs of any stress in the market. So, apart from December futures contracts, UK options and UK daily futures are other products available in the secondary market. So, what I'll do now is I'll hand over to my colleague Ash to take us through the final section of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Supreet. I will just quickly touch upon future markets policy and how we're looking to sort of shape and develop market stability mechanisms in particular as we move forward. So, as previously mentioned, when the UK ETS was first established in 2021, when we left the EU ETS, market policies were implemented to support the stable launch of a new market and ensure it functions effectively, particularly in its early years. We recently reviewed UK ETS markets policy to ensure that it remains fit for purpose and is effective in managing the risk that we now face as an established scheme rather than a new one back in 2021. So we previously published a consultation in December 2023 to ask the market whether we have identified the most significant risks to market functioning, the suitability of different policy options to address those risks, and how individual market stability policies, including a potential supply adjustment mechanism, could and should be designed to most effectively address market risks. Thanks, Neil. So in December 2025, so sort of a 2-year process, we published a response to that consultation for the market on future markets policy, in which we announced the following policy decisions for a standalone UK ETS. So we have an ARP, which was originally £22, as Supreet mentioned. And we implemented an inflation-based increase to take it to £28 in 2026. And this value will increase yearly from 2027 onwards. We also decided to maintain the existing design and operation of our cost containment mechanism and also retain the discretion element of the CCM rather than making it an automatic mechanism. And we also discounted the implementation of a supply adjustment mechanism, which is based on quantity for a standalone UK ETS, as we felt existing price-based mechanisms such as the CCM and ARP are good enough to mitigate against key risks. So I think that comes to the end of the presentation. So thank you to everyone who's listened, and also to Spreef and Nia for helping to make this as smooth as possible. If people have any other questions later on down the line, do feel free to reach out and we can come back and answer them as best we can. Just before I end, I know there's one question in the chat about the UK ETS and why it differs from the EU ETS in terms of the mechanisms we have. So we deemed in our December 2025 consultation that a quantity-based supply adjustment mechanism wasn't suitable for a standalone UK ETS in addressing our key risks, and we felt the CCM and ARP were sufficient enough to mitigate against key risks, primarily looking at price shocks, both high and low. But there's no reason why a scheme can't have both a price-based mechanism such as the CCM and ARP alongside a supply adjustment mechanism. We just felt in the UK ETS that wasn't the best route for us in comparison to the EU, who I know have a quantity-based mechanism when it comes to the MSR. They've had that from the beginning, and obviously it works and does the job in mitigating against key risks for the EU. But yeah, we thought it wasn't appropriate for a standalone UK scheme. But the EU also have something called Article 29A, which is effectively operating as a price-based mechanism, where if prices reach a certain level when it comes to EUAs, then they can inject, I think it's 75 million allowances into the market. So they are sort of operating with both in tandem, whereas the UK are just operating with a price-based mechanism policy for now. But yeah, I can end it there, I think, unless we have any other questions that we need to tackle now. Thank you all.
Okay, so is there any question? So may I ask one question? So for this stability mechanism, so you have two mechanisms, the minimum price as well as the cost containment. And since the cost containment, even though they are triggered, but they are not like actually implemented, right? So the decision was not to implement it. So does it mean that so far from the starting of the UK ETS, there is no market intervention in terms of for stability reason? Am I correct?
Yeah, so in the UK, the ARP, which is acts as a sort of a price floor where it's set at £22, and obviously it's now set at 28. That price has never been reached. And when it comes to the CCM, I think Supreet mentioned it's triggered twice previously. But because it's a discretionary mechanism where we can decide to act upon it through injecting more allowances into the market, I think the authority in the UK ETS at the time decided the best course of action was to take no action. So allowances were not injected into the market to bring the price down at the time. And since then, I think those instances happened in December 2021 and January 2022. The CCM has not been triggered since then. So it's just those two instances. The ARP and the AR price has never been met as well. And even though the mechanisms aren't sort of frequently activated, we don't see that as a bad sign, because we primarily want the market to work itself out and for price discovery to be natural, and our influence on the market to sort of be minimized as much as possible, and us for only to intervene when there's sufficient problems with prices or issues with market fundamentals. So that's that. I hope that answers that question.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I know we've kept you quite a while already, so thanks for your patience, everyone. I've just seen we just got one more quick question that's come in on Zoom, specifically for the UK, on why it decided to choose the daily futures instead of a spot market in the secondary markets. I don't know if you could very quickly give us some insights on that decision.
Yes, I can go with that. It's basically because it is effectively a near spot product, but with future market safeguard. It is also the most traded product. So in a market where a futures product are the most traded product than spot product, it's always easier for us to understand how the price works and whether the market has taken all the risk into account, rather than something which is being rarely traded. The spot products are also traded, but the volume of spot products traded against future products is minuscule. That's why we preferred going for the future product. And also because other than it gives a transparent, standardized product for participants as well. So we know that if say if you're talking about 2026, the December 2026, end of December 2026 future product will be the most widely traded product. So it gives the market participants also some foresight and transparency that this is the product we'll look at when we are when we are making any policy decisions. I hope I was able to answer that question.
Yes, it shows that you have a clear thoughts on that. So thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can we have a round of applause for all of you? Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.